Welcome back to the French Rugby Podcast with me, Tim Groves, former France hooker Benjamin Kaiser, and ex-Scotland back row Johnny Beattie. How's your week been, guys? Straight into it there, no warm-up. How's your week?
Listen, the weeks, it's the last week of school. So I've got a big, I've got a heavy heart for all the parents out there who are going to be thrown into the mist of Christmas time coming, the excitement, obviously the last minute gifts with shops being closed, the lack of money because jobs have been chucked in the bin, and kids at home. So I've got a big, full heart of compassion and empathy for all these people, including myself, number one, obviously. but
Most importantly.
Week's been all right. Everything's okay. Just
on that, Benji, like, be honest, both of you. Have either of you done any Christmas shopping yet? And who does the Christmas shopping? Because
I've done nothing.
Yeah,
I've done nothing.
Yeah, not one bit. Even from nothing. And for your family, Benji, does Andrea buy everything for your parents? Yeah. And you say absolutely useless. But
you've made me feel a lot better. You're making me feel a lot better. Johnny, how's your week?
Really relaxed. Also, I wasn't working the final weekend, so I actually got to sit and watch England-France, which I'm sure we'll get onto, with about 6 beers, shouting at my TV, and absolutely loved it. So it's been really relaxed. Little fella sleeping the whole way through the night already, which is great. Absolutely not.
Good lad.
Chance. So no, mate, just carnage. Looking forward to Christmas, winding down. Looking forward to a bit more rugby this weekend, and just quiet life. Looking forward to Christmas.
Johnny mentioned he was watching with beers. No beers for you, Benji, but what did you make of it at Twickenham?
So listen, for one, I was chuffed. Okay, the general gist, what I made of it is that it was an incredible day of rugby. There was 2,000 fans, which is not 80 or 90,000 that Twickenham can have, but it's still better than nothing. It's still showing the end of the light at the end of the tunnel. And I thought it was mission impossible for this young team. I knew they were not going to get trashed because there was a lot of talent. And I was just getting a little bit more pissed off about the lack of respect, basically, of the press. Because they can say that it's a rotated team, but they don't need to call it a farce. That's just crossing the line. It's really going that too far. So I think, especially at the moment, newspapers, journalists, whatever, they've got a responsibility, the same as the players, what they're starting to say. They're there to put a smile on people's faces. That's the responsibility of professional sport at the moment. The world is a bit of a gloomy place. So instead of calling it a farce, say, can't wait to see those youngsters. Yes, of course, England are favourites, for sure. But, just in this new competition, created out of nowhere, with no crowds, let's just spin it off, in something positive. And at the end, I saw an incredible game. I saw some fantastic young players who gave absolutely everything they had. I saw quite a boring England team, to be fair. They were disappointed that obviously did not play to their full strength. And all I wanted to be a happy finish was Eddie Jones to come out and to be like, fair play. Those youngsters really proved the point. They have a big heart. They almost beat us. They should have beaten us. Fair play to them. We'll upwards, we'll move on, we'll learn. But that guy comes out and he's like, mate, 2-3% off our performance. That's the only reason why it took us so long to win. It's like, he didn't watch the same game as me. What the hell is he talking about? And then he goes on about saying, actually, we got data on those guys. And the second team actually ends up being as good as the first team. So what is he on about? Like, it's super disrespectful. So the same team that you're calling the C team, rotation, the farce, whatever, they didn't call many fires, did they, in the England camp? They didn't say anything. And then the same sort of, he saw the same things, that last penalty to win basically the line out to go into the final try was obviously not a penalty. Shit happens. I know that Andrew Brace is now paying the consequences now, but I actually don't blame him that much because he's on the other side of the rock. I blame more his assistant refs. Well, basically, a mistake was made. It happens. I don't think it was intentional. I just think it was a mistake. But to make it a little bit better, you just admit it. There was a mistake. We could have lost. Fair play to them. Just like pump those, reward heart, reward passion, reward commitment. And he comes up and he's like miserable. 2-3% off our performance. That's why it took us a long time to win. I was like, that's small, that's disappointing. So that really left a bitter taste in my mouth. Otherwise it was a great day. was super proud of the boys. I was super proud of the effort. It was actually a really good game to watch. Not incredible game, but a good game to watch. And everybody was on their feet. Extra time doesn't happen very often. So that's why it left a bit of a bitter taste at the end.
I don't think that's ever going to come from Eddie, though. And notoriously, it's never going to come from English press. But my gut feel on watching it, I had a real feel that everybody else that's watching the game around the world will be pumped and will be positive and will be energetic and will be excited for French rugby. Just that Eddie in that moment, because he's Eddie, wasn't. But I think for everyone else that was watching it, what they saw was pretty spectacular in loads of different ways. Yes, absolutely written off as a farce, but written off as a farce. And then even like the body language and the attitude of some of the players, the first 10 minutes, like Ellis Genge, like winding people up I was just like, I just hope these French boys stand up and smash them. And they absolutely did from the first minute to the end. And look, I think what we also saw was a certain level of maturity, even though it was a really young side. England have got this kick game, kick percentage, minimal risk. We will kick you to death. We'll bore you. France were like, well, we can do it too, lads. Like they just pinged everything back and shoved it back on England. The only thing England had was contestable kicks, which they do really, really well. But then you look at Villiers, Brice-Dulin, the games that those boys had, they were phenomenal. So it was absolutely outstanding to watch, even though it was a very, very specific type of game. We're going to keep the ball infield. We're going to kick it to death. Nobody's kicking out for lineouts. Quite strategic. But 5 years ago, France would have imploded mentally. They'd have tried to run something back when they shouldn't have, conceded a penalty, and the game would have been over after 30 minutes. We didn't see that. We saw maturity from, as everyone said, a BC side, a mixed team of young kids who actually had all the raw ingredients to come together and perform to international standard against the second best team in the world. So I thought it was phenomenal. And you look at all the individual performances along. So Brice-Dulin, for me, again, you'll be now knocking on the door starting as the fullback for the Six Nations. Anthony Gelonche, we talked about him last week, the French Juan Smith. A monster. Man, did you see when Billy Vunipola had a 30-meter run up, ran the ball back down his throat, and boom?
Him and Pessanti were looking for Billy Vunipola to hold the whole game.
Unbelievable.
They were just tracking him, was like, who's going to chop him first? It was really awesome. They saw a big piece of meat in the middle of the field, and everybody wanted to bite. No, I thought it was brilliant. I couldn't agree more with you. I thought Dulin was fantastic, showed a lot of maturity. I thought Jalibert has his best game under the French jersey by a mile, a million times better than last week. Really showed everything that he had. And it's just interesting to see the difference of spirit when a team cannot afford to lose, and when a team doesn't have anything to lose, they just play very, very differently. I think it impacts the French more than any other countries in the world. That's why it can be so annoying, but also so rewarding. And typically, Jalibert last week played 50% of his ability because he had to. He had to control the game. He had to kick in the corners and all that. 2 weeks ago. And then last week, obviously, he could have a go, have a crack. He's a phenomenal attacker. He's got great step. He creates some stuff. Moefana, to be fair, played out of his skin. I did not expect him to be as good as that. He's got great step. He's got fantastic defensive ability. Jonathan Danty put some big shots again. Yeah. He is no fun to be around. Gabin Villiers, I am wondering how good he can be because every time you see him, he's just better and better.
Exceptional, man. He's awesome.
Yeah, and then the second row, I was chuffed because Guirassy, Pessanti play super. I think he's Alwyn Jones, honestly. He's a beast. Good.
And Cameron Walkie, the guy that we've kind of talked about a little bit, but again, you stick in that athleticism, that graft, what he can do. He also carried really well on the fringes when he got ball, or when he does get ball with Bordeaux, but he didn't at the weekend. The other thing for me is they found another guy that can run and can destroy an opposition lineout. He nicked 3 of England's ball. It just doesn't happen normally at international level, whereas athletic, good timing on the jump. He was awesome. Another guy that
Did you ever realize how actually big he is? I didn't think he was that big. He's actually like Courtney Lawes almost.
He's 6'6".
He's that big and he's absolutely huge.
And his levers, his arms are ridiculous. Like I did a game Edinburgh against Bordeaux, and I talked to him after the game just on passing. And again, just how tall he is. He looks so athletic on the field that you don't really think guys that are 6'6" can be that athletic. But then it was his levers. You saw they do a bit of a mirror line out at Bordeaux, but like even if he's late on a ball, if he gets in the air, because he's got such long arms and he's such a good athlete, he's a handful. So another one that was outstanding. And then the general point that you mentioned, but just seeing guys that they're exciting to watch, they're happy, they're passionate, and it's a joy for them to be there. Like, how long has it been the case that we haven't seen that for the French team? So
Absolutely.
like, if they could play against New Zealand, South Africa now and get the World Cup brought forward, absolutely, I'd be all for it. But it's just amazing for world rugby in general to have a French team where it is now. I think it's outstanding. And it's been an amazing year for them. So it was awesome to watch.
Yeah.
Just before we move off of this France team, you mentioned a few names there. Obviously, Eddie might not have acknowledged it, but it was a France second team. Some people were calling it a third or a fourth team. Just shows the strength and depth that they have. But of that team, how many do you think could be in the starting side come the Six Nations? Is there a Villiers, a Woki, a Geelong? Like, who is going to be in the starting team, do you think?
I don't think that they're going to go for a mass upheaval. But I think what it shows is they have a strength of depth. If there's any injuries, they've got guys that can slot in, and it doesn't change the quality of their side. Woki can come in and do a job. McAloo was off the bench. He was disappointing in his start the week before. But like, again, they need more game time. They need 20, 30, 40 minutes off the bench. And then if there's injuries, they're starters. There's no doubt that these guys are more than capable. And it doesn't detract anything away from the quality of the team, as opposed to anybody really forcing their way into start ahead of. I think Fabien Galtier now knows he's got a bucket load of young kids that can do an outstanding job at that level.
Yeah, I think there's a few spots that were won on the bench. I think between Woki, who can be he can cover every position, Geelong, who played really well, McAloo still proved that as an impact player, he's pretty phenomenal. And can cover all positions. So they scored some points. I think Gabin Villiers will be in the rotation. Never forget, Damien Penaud has not been playing for 6 months or something. Yeah. And he is a freak of nature whenever he gets going. So you just don't know how good he can be. I think actually the one who might have scored the most points might be Brice Dulin, just because
100%.
Boutier has been fantastic for Montpellier. And he's been a great sort of story. But remember, and it's funny because they're both lefties, if I don't get it wrong. Brice Dulin has got a hell of a kick on him. He doesn't kick to post and stuff, but he can kick a long distance. He's got a good 50, 60 meter clearance kick, a bit what Boutier's got. And at the moment in attack, he offers more. So I think he might have scored some serious points. And the others will be more within the rotation. I wouldn't be surprised if Paul Willemse needs to step up his game. He had one incredible game against Wales in March 2020. Since then, he's been a little bit not off, but just not the same level. And Romain Tao has been incredibly good, I think. So that big solid five could be Tao. And then Willemse will not be on the bench. And on the bench, Pesanti, Guirassy are scoring some serious points because they're very, very good. Animals. So with Bernard Leroux, I think at the moment, having the number 4 jersey for a while. So I think the bench has scored some points. But how comfortable is it? Just to say that now, listen, if we drop one, then we know we've got a little bit of depth. They need to build on that. They wanted the 15, they had it in a couple of months. They wanted 23, they had it basically after the Ireland game. Now they've got 35, and that is incredible. In a year's time, that is an absolute blessing. And we're going to obviously get the rewards later, but this was a phenomenal stepping stone into the future success, I believe. Sustainable future success, if you know what I mean.
And you mentioned the refereeing and Andrew Brace, Benji. He's obviously been withdrawn from Toulouse's game against Exeter next weekend. So, I mean, Johnny, you're in France. Benji, you were at the game. Has he come in for a lot of flack in France? I know he missed the knock on, but I mean, he didn't have that bad a game, did he?
I think he got some abuse from a BK 1984 on social media. BK Tunbridge Wells 1984. I don't know who that is. To be honest, I mean, I'll let you answer that one, Johnny. But whatever we joke about, abuse is out of order. Okay, yeah. You can be angry, pissed off, whatever. Referees are human beings. Number one is respect. Whatever you feel, believe, express it at your local pub. Express it with your mates on a Sunday if you want. But shut your mouth when it's about social media and personal threats and whatever. That's completely out of order.
Yeah, crossover line, especially like it's careers now. So that guy's now been withdrawn from reffing in the European top competition in France because of some bell end on Twitter. Like, come on.
Do you reckon he asked to be removed?
I hope not. I really hope not, because I would hate to see, like, he's a good operator. I've watched loads of his games. He's a great ref. And I don't think that any of the mistakes were entirely his fault. Like, you can't take it all on your shoulders. Like you said earlier, Benji, he's got a team around him. Yeah. He was on the wrong side of the ruck for one of the knock-ons and lead up to a try. I thought that there were a couple of things missed. Yes, that was crucial. It was in the build-up to a try for England, which changed the game. But there were a couple of things missed, close to touch charges for both sides. So there's a few things that went awry. But, you know, the fact that the guy's had to pull out or has been pulled out, I don't think we should tolerate for 1 second. Like, he should be there operating because he's a great ref. He does a fantastic job week in, week out. And one high-profile game like that, where the team around him doesn't perform that well, should not mean that he's pulled out of European Cup, because it's the best level and it's the best competition to play in. So no, I hope that it's a one-off, and I hope that he's back. I hope they give him a game in the second round or the third round in France once everyone's cooled down, or once BK Tunbridge Wells has issued an apology.
But to put the dots on the I's, whatever you say in English, it's he I'm sure if you rewind the game, you will find 10 decisions that were unfair against England, and that he cocked up, because it's refereeing rugby is very complicated. But the crucial penalty, to give the penalty to England, to allow them to go 5 meters out, to then do the driving maul, to equal at the 78th minute or something. So that's crucial. That is a bloody massive mistake. There's a 1 meter forward pass, well, not forward pass, but knock on in the ruck by the ball carrier, and he blows a penalty against Tolofua. The touch judge is literally standing 5 meters away from that. So I'm fuming about that one. Andrew Brace has got nothing to do with it for that one. And then that's his toucher, I think, that cocked it up. Secondly, at the end of the game, before they get the penalty to actually win it, you remember on that kickoff, there's Sekou Makalu, who they say does a knock on the kickoff when he gets it. I could not see it. I have no clue. So it's easy to actually rewind, press pause. Why did he not ask for video refereeing? Such a crucial call. Such a massive call in a massive game in extra time. Take a second to actually have a look at it. They constantly look at it when it's not useful, and when you can finally use it, they don't. So that's what I blame him for. It's not. I don't think it was misintentioned at all. I don't think he tried to, because I think he's a lovely guy. He's Irish, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think there's anything personal, or absolutely no vendetta. But to prevent mistakes, seek help from your touch judge, or take the video when you can.
But then not seeking, a touch judge is well within his rights to stick a flag out and change the course 100%. Of the game. That's why he's there. So as is a TMO. So we've all watched it in our, like, I was back home, I had 5 beers deep, and for me it was clear as day. He didn't touch the ball. There was no knock on. So the TMO's role, you stop the game. You're in his ear, you get into him and say, look, that's not a knock on. Because that's just such a crucial part of the game that changed the course and the result of the game, obviously, and harsh against Makalu. But I think everyone at home saw it. But, you know, that's what TMOs are for. Step in, right decision, game on.
If World Rugby are listening, I don't think the advice of have 5 beers when you're a TMO is good advice, Johnny. Well, let's get our guest on now. He is an Englishman who won his last cap for England against France at Twickenham, but he's gone on to have a stellar career over in France in the top 14. It's a man who spent years picking up Benji's passes off his bootstraps, Benji. Nick Abendanon joins us. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Here in my wife's office. She's commandeered, and nice little glass of red with me. Good to see some old faces there, and looking forward to the catch up.
Very nice. And where is the office? Because you left Clermont at the end of last season, moved to Van. So are you in Van?
I'm in Van at the moment. Yeah, in the west wing of the.
Don't look at a map, mate. Come on, that's bad. That's bad. That is bad. You're only getting paid by them. You know, you should know where you are.
Yeah, so I'm in Van at the moment, and I got to say I'm loving it here.
How have you settled in, mate?
It's been tough, but it's got to a point now where we're all settled in. We're in our new house. Everything's unpacked, good to go. So it's been tricky because we spent 6 years in Clermont, bought a house there, had our kids there, didn't really want to leave, And yeah, we just thought we'd give it a go. The first probably month we were like, what the hell are we doing? But now we settled in. We've absolutely loved it, and we've definitely we've been happy that we made the decision to come here.
To explain you, Nikki, the reason why we're doing this is because of all the shite that we hear about France in the UK, and people have basically being fed shit about the reality and stuff. And there's always who made it and why, and who did it and why, and the particularly, the charismatic things that you can see in France day in, day out, the little things that you fell in love with, because I know that personally, but also the things that could bug you from time to time. So that's why. But before we get chatting about all that, I just want to say that I always get asked basically who made it and why and this and that. I do think Nick is one of the biggest successes of definitely one of the biggest successes in terms of English people, even if we're talking about your nationality, because I think you're a bit unsure about it. But he's definitely one of the biggest successes in terms of integration, taking the whole experience into one. I think it all started because of the type of dude that you are, because you're open-minded, you were curious, you were keen. He got off in France. We make a huge point about the language. France is I was going to swear again, but is complicated to learn. Okay, but if you make the effort, if you show that you want to do it, it makes a hell of a difference. And we'll probably answer you in English to say, you think I don't speak English? You think I'm a dick or what? But still, it shows that you're trying to make an effort, and that's what Nick did from the start. Not only did he was a legendary good player, he's a fantastic teammate to have in the changing room. Always got a smile on his face, always positive about the things that he saw around him. Absolutely fell in love with France, and that's why I'm absolutely delighted to have a chat with you now. Not only is it a pleasure to speak to you in general, but because I think you're one of the great examples of, you want to make it in France, this is how you do it.
Nick, I can only assume that he's saying that because you've got some dirt on him that he doesn't want you to.
It's my second bottle of wine. I become nice, It's just the first one, I'm a bit like this.
So just talk to us, Nick, about initially when you moved over to Clermont. Then how easy or how hard was that to acclimatise and to get used to the kind of difference in culture in France compared to an English rugby?
Well, I think the hardest part was leaving Bath. I'd been at Bath for 10 years. In my head, I thought I was going to play at Bath the rest of my career. I was Bath through and through. Absolutely loved the city. My family are close. I started going out with my now wife, Florence. So we were all pretty settled there. I still had a year left on my contract. And out of the blue, had a call off the Clermont manager, Neil McElroy, saying, look, would you be interested in coming over to play for Clermont? At the time, I was a bit sort of taken back about it. Didn't really take it too seriously. It was only when I really sat down with my dad and my brother that obviously Benji knows my dad very well. So the first chance he heard that I had a chance of going over to play in France, he was like, "Well, you got to go. You got to go." Think of all those wine chateaus in Bordeaux that we can go visit. So it was only after speaking to those two that I started to take it seriously and set the wheels in motion, really. It wasn't easy. I don't think many people know this story actually, but I said yes to Neil. I had to go to Bruce Craig and tell him that I want to leave my contract early, which obviously he wasn't happy about. Actually I ended up having to pay myself out of my contract.
Wow.
To get released to go to Clermont, because Clermont said they weren't going to pay any transfer fee, so it was up to me to get released. Had told Bruce Craig that it's a done deal that I'm going, and then a week later Neil McElroy called me and said, "Oh look, we're really sorry, but actually we've gone for someone else."
Oh, shit.
And I think I'm not sure who it was. He never told me, but I think it was Benjamin Fell. They decided to go for Benjamin Fell over me, and then at the last minute, Benjamin Fell then decided to go to Montpellier. And so 3 days after then going back to Bruce and saying, oh, look, actually, they've decided to go with someone else. So I'm staying at Bath. Neil McElroy called me up again and said, I'm really sorry, mate. This is really unprofessional, but that guy's decided to go somewhere else. The spot's open again. Are you still interested? And I had to go on my hands and knees groveling to say, I'm really sorry, mate, but I'm out of here.
I never did.
It was quite a bizarre start to the whole adventure.
Is that why you grew a massive beard? You tried to create another persona to be like, listen, I'm a Kiwi. You don't know who I am, but I'm Aistoyava basically for future. He came with a giant. It's like, who the hell is this tiny little English, Dutch, South African white man
Viking
with a massive beard and basically blonde hair? But you killed it from the start, mate. So it was a great decision.
Yeah, that didn't last long in the 45-degree heat of Clermont. That came off pretty quickly.
And you mentioned how hard it was to leave Bath. Was a part of the motivation sort of not being able to get recognition by England? Was that a part of it? If you were getting recognition, do you think you'd have stayed?
I think at Bath we had some great teams I played in. When Butch James was there, Michael Claessen's. We had a fantastic team there with Ollie Barkley, some great players, Matt Banahan, and we were always sort of we threatened to get into the playoffs, but we were always sort of around, either squeezing into the playoffs at the last minute or sort of middle of the table, getting on the Super Sunday earlier than most other teams and cracking on thinking about next season. So I think I was just a bit sick and tired of not playing in a few big games, and obviously, having followed French rugby myself, I knew that I played against Clermont in the final of the 2007 Challenge Cup. That was my first breakout season at Bath, so I'd already had a taste of playing against a massive French side like Clermont, and I've always wanted to play overseas ever since I was at Bath. I had one opportunity to go to Australia with old Danny Cipriani to the Melbourne Rebels, which I also almost very closely was almost a done deal as well, and that fell through at the last minute. Luckily, I didn't. Otherwise, I'd be probably stealing a bottle of vodka behind the bar with him. But yeah, so as soon as I had the opportunity, I mean, it's one of those clubs you don't really say no to. It's like if you get asked to play for the Barbarians, if you say no to the Barbarians, you never get invited back again. So I think the grandeur of the Clermont shirt and the sort of the pull behind that was something that appealed to me too much.
And if it hadn't been Clermont, would you have gone? That interest. A lot of people have a sort of French dream. You've all said your dad almost had the French dream for you, and that you wanted to get out and drink wine in chateaus. But if it had been a Cast or a Brive or a team that wasn't in that grand stadium, would you have gone? Would that have been able to pry you away from Bath, or did it have to be a big all-star cast like Clermont?
Yeah, before I came to Clermont, I didn't know where Brive was.
Yeah, there you go. I think you've answered my question.
Cast, actually. Yeah, I think it would have to have been one of the big clubs to pull me away from Bath. I think I love the city. I still see myself going back and living there potentially in the future if Benji and Stretz don't pull me towards the Seven Oaks area. But yeah, I think when it was Clermont, then that had my it was set at a done deal really.
Let's face it, your dad can find a chateau anywhere, man. Basically, in the middle of the boggiest, dirtiest farm, he'll find something to drink, a nice fella, and a good conversation to get going. So anything across the channel, I think he was in. He's like, let's go. But honestly, how much of so maybe we'll talk about it later, I don't know, but how much of your upbringing and basically your parents being sort of not adventurous, but having traveled and you have a sort of mixed origins and stuff, how much did that play a part into the fact that whenever you speak to, you're always curious about other things, you're always keen on discovering other things. You're not the type of guy, I think, maybe I'm wrong, but that would have stayed his whole life in the Premiership. You pretty much answered the question by saying it was either the Melbourne Rebels. If it hadn't been that, I think right now you would have been looking at Japan or just doing something fun. Is that down to your upbringing, you reckon?
Yeah, I think it's definitely got a part to play in it. You know, we were a family when we were young that we just went on, you know, holidays all the time, and you know, coming from the rough streets of Bath, it was pretty difficult. No, I mean, my whole family lived in South Africa when we were growing up, so it was always Christmas times in South Africa, and then you know, my dad has worked and travelled all over Africa. He's also a world traveller. Obviously, Benji knows him well. He's involved in a society called the Spoofing Society, and it's basically a bunch of pissheads that.
That's my dream goal. Just
yeah.
That's my life goal. Just so you know. By the way, I want to apply.
It's they've turned it into a pretty amazing society, and by which I think 95% of them are divorced, but they basically travel around watching international rugby matches around the world, and they do spoofing tournaments, competitions, and so every single, you know, Lions test, you know, South African test, any test match anywhere, you'll find a spoofer somewhere. My dad's got a very famous friend, Nick Abendanon, he's kept a program from every single one of his tests. He's gone to go and watch. He's up to about 630 test matches, and he traveled to Georgia versus Russia. He travels, I mean, all over the world just watching rugby. And so it's definitely been in my blood to play overseas and do a lot of traveling. So yeah, I reckon it's definitely played a part in why I came to Clermont.
Mate, you've done a bit of traveling now from Clermont to Van. Give us a little insight into how you're actually finding the in and outs of rugby life in Van. Like, not many people know about Van as a club. It was in Federal 1 4 or 5 years ago, but they've actually got a cracking little stadium. The surface is great. I imagine it suits you down to the ground. It's a fast track. You were meant to host Fiji, France, but it was cancelled. But how have you found, like, obviously Clermont, massive club. How have you found going from Clermont, huge games, massive spectacles, down to Pro D2? Honestly, how are you finding Pro D2? I've been there. It's a graft. How are you finding it?
Yeah, look, you know, like I said earlier, I never wanted to leave Clermont. I still had a +1 on my contract. And unfortunately, you know, I had a bad run of a couple of injuries, as Benji knows, a couple of neck hernias, which kept me out of the season a couple of years ago. And, you know, understandably, I was getting towards sort of, you know, age limit wise of time to move on. And Clermont released me from my +1. Didn't hold anything against them. You know, I had a fantastic run at Clermont, and they, you know, it's their business. They got to make those sort of tough decisions. In my head, I thought, you know, as soon as the whole COVID hit, I was like, well, no club's going to come for an old washed out fullback now. So, you know, I thought that was going to be the end. I was going to hang up my boots and look towards the next chapter. And was it end of August? Had a call from Van. Had to look straight away on the map where Van was, because yeah, I didn't know too much about the club, about the place, about the region. And when I signed, I'll be honest with you, I signed more of you know, by the beach. Benji's fairly acquainted with this region, having his parents live just down the road in Trinité de Mer. And I was like, for the kids, it just seemed like a great choice to, if it wasn't going to be down in Bayonne or Biarritz, where you're lucky enough to be, then, you know, it was something that I've always wanted to do, is live by the sea. Floz's family have holidayed in Brittany since she was a little girl, so she said it's an absolutely amazing place. And yeah, I pretty much made it, first of all, for a lifestyle change. But now that I'm actually here and I've got stuck into the season, I've met the team. It's changed completely. My look on why I'm here has changed. Now it's to try and, you know, hopefully help this team to get promoted into top 14. It's given me a new lease of life in terms of in terms of the rugby, I mean, it's you can't compare it to Clermont. It's we train in a tent. We've got a pretty dated training facilities, but the guys come in with a smile on their face. There's never any complaining. They're grafters. I thought that it was probably going to be a lot easier than it has been, but they're very, very professional players here. They just haven't maybe got the luck or the opportunities that some of the guys in the top 14 have got. And the tightness of the team is amazing. Everyone's really gets on well, and that shows in the bus trips on the way back when you have to travel for 9 hours in a bus with the boys from wherever to Van. It's great fun, and I'm seriously glad that I've come here.
I think that's one thing people don't appreciate when you go from top 14 to Pro D2. Any money that was for frivolous stuff, we say frivolous stuff, but things that you take for granted, like travel or food or infrastructure, is gone. There's nothing. So like, if you're in an extremity geographically, like you are up the north, we are that, like every second weekend, we're on a bus for 13 hours.
Yeah.
People don't appreciate, but even though in that league, there are some absolute gems. I was going to ask you as well, having knocked around now for half a season in Pro D2, have you come across any people that you think could make it? Like I remember coming across absolute freaks of second rows, props that could scrummage, and some really exciting young kids that nobody knew about. Are there any kids at Van that you think could go on and make it and jump up another level, or anybody you come across in Pro D2 you think is pretty decent?
2 years ago, the fullback of Van was Anthony Boutier.
Exactly.
Yeah,
fullback
of France.
They still tell me I'm nowhere near as good as them. So living in
You got it in before Benji.
They tried to offer me a contract of 3,000 a month or something, and then he took 30,000 a month from Montpellier.
He's a smart man.
No, I rate you higher than him. I'm telling you.
No, but yeah, he's one of the players who they talk about a lot here. Having made that transition, he was playing Pro D2 for Van 1 week, and the next week he was signed for Montpellier and playing for France. So, look, in my opinion, there's a bunch of guys in this team that could easily play top 14. And I think, I know that, a couple of them have already signed for top 14 clubs. One of them signed for mine and Benji's old club, but I won't say who. But yeah, I mean, you've got some.
What position?
Hey?
Whoa.
Give us a clue.
Tight five, all the rest of the pussies.
Yeah, that's like at the end of a Saxons tour when they say, right, you've got to fill out a questionnaire. It's anonymous, but what club do you play at, and how many caps have you had for England?
And what are your initials?
And everyone's like, I'm not going to put my name, but I've had. I'll keep that one close to my chest, but I think. We've obviously done fantastically well this year, and top 14 clubs, they've got to deal with this whole GIF rule, and I don't think you can get anything better than some good players in the top 14 who you probably don't have to pay a huge amount of money for, like some international superstars, but will be absolute grafters. Everyone in here is chomping at the bit to try and get their opportunity to get into a top 14, and it's always, in my opinion, it's all about luck. You just need luck. Some of these guys just need a couple of injuries, get into a club as a medical joker or something like that, and take their opportunity. But yeah, there's definitely players here that could play in the top 14.
There's a lot of examples at the moment in the French team of success stories. Like you said, of guys who just need an opportunity. So the hooker who started last week against England, Pierre Bourgarit, him and the number 8, Greg Aldrich, and the guy who was 3 times man of the match in the Six Nations 2020. Both of them played for the Espoirs of a Federal 1 team, Auch, which is 45 minutes away from Toulouse. But only 3.5 years ago, they won the title of the Espoirs. So the under 23s basically with Auch, and got picked up by the forwards coach of Auch, who took them with them in La Rochelle. A year later, they were playing for the French team. So that's how quick it can go. That's how quick it can be. And basically, to speak about Anthony Boutier, I thought there was I don't know if you guys saw it in England, but the French team did something that was very cool, I thought. Behind the numbers of the players, they put their first starting club, their first ever club of origin. And then they did a jersey ceremony the night before the Ireland game. And Galtier started. He actually started crying because he's talking about his dad and the fact that his dad created his first club that he ever played for, and his dad passed a couple of years ago and this and that. Virimi Vakatawa was actually shocked. He couldn't say a word because it's the first time he saw the name of his tiny little village club from Fiji under the French jersey. You know, it's just those emotions that you've never seen in the French team. I thought they were fantastic. Bernard Leroux telling us the story, because we had him there, that he used to play barefooted, or I don't know how you say that. And his first pair of shoes that his mom agreed to buy him were about 3 sizes too big, because you'll grow into them in the next 3 years, because she didn't want to spend too much money. So he used to play with boots that were like this when he was 14 or something. Just all different funny stories that came out of that. And Anthony Boutier stands up. He's like, listen, guys, I've only won 1 title in my career. So if we could win the Six Nations tomorrow, it would be the second one. And that would be amazing. But my first one, and the only one that I've won so far, is under 16's second team 10s tournament for a team that he was playing for 5 years ago before Van, which was Federal 1 and then Federal 2 at the time and Federal 1. So he was playing 6 years ago in the second team of a Federal 2 team, with which he won the competition of the 10s rugby or whatever. That's how far he's come from. And there's loads of them. Gabin Villiers coming from the 7s. JP Barak, who's the guy in Clermont who's killing it, who went back to 7s a bit and that. And I think that's awesome. I really do think, apart from boxing, maybe, rugby is the only sport we can have those crazy stories.
Yeah. I think it's great. I don't know if you've watched the on a similar sort of topic, Chasing the Sun, about the South African sort of winning the World Cup. It's sort of the same sort of stories of, you know, if you delve deep into people's, you know, where they're from, I think it just it clicks the right type of strings to get them performing for everyone around them and for the coaches come game day.
100%.
You might not be able to tell us about those moves of your teammates going to the top 14, but you might be able to shed a bit of light on potential rumours about yourself, because you moved to Van, but there were rumours of Leicester, London Irish. There were rumours that you were looking about trying to go back to Bath. So were there other offers? Where were those offers, and how close did you come to moving back to England?
For the story, I pushed for Leicester and he told me to get fucked. He's like, no chance. No chance. Not happening. Forget about it, Benji. Go to bed. That's what he told me. Okay.
Yeah, I thought someone who's becoming, you know, the new David Flatman of the commentary world would be more of an in than that. But, no, actually, I was very, very close to going to Leicester. It was if they had offered me a 2-year deal, then I would have been in Leicester. I'm pretty glad they didn't offer me a 2-year deal. But yeah, so I was in pretty long conversations with London Irish, Leicester. Bath came in at the last minute, but that didn't last for very long. But yeah, you know, the coach of the coach of London Irish, Brad Davis, was the backs coach for me at Bath, so I was chatting to him a lot. And then Declan Kidney and
Les Kiss,
yeah, Declan Kidney and Les Kiss had a Skype call with them. Didn't understand a word Declan Kidney said, so I'm not going to London Irish then. And yeah, I mean, had a number of chats with Steve Borthwick, and he was my captain at Bath for 5 years. I've had a number of players in the current England setup, and also when he was coach at Bristol, say that he's the best coach they've ever been coached by, and that was a massive pull for me. If I'd gone to Leicester, it would have been purely for that fact, was to be coached by Steve Borthwick. It definitely wouldn't have been to go and experience the nightclubs of Leicester again. But yeah, unfortunately, they just said that they couldn't get a 2-year deal for me because of my age, and Van had a 2-year deal on the table, so I thought I may as well go for the 2-year deal in Van.
Absolutely. And so going on to something that we talk quite regularly about on here, and different players who have moved from England to France or from South Africa to France or from wherever to France, they talk about the coaching when they get there. You obviously moved to Clermont a while back. How big a difference was it coaching wise between Bath and Clermont? And have you seen a massive kind of development in the coaching in France over the last 5 years or so?
Honk is not your daddy anymore, so you can actually be honest for the first time in your life, you know?
I still have weekly chats with him, mate, so I can't be...
Bedtime stories. Bedtime stories, that's about it.
You credit the scouting officer. Yeah, to be honest, I was a little bit sort of worried about it when I first decided to come out to Bath, because you do hear so many stories about the French coaching, the French sort of medical departments and things like that. So it was definitely something that was nagging in the back of my head. But I was lucky enough to have gone to a club like Clermont, where I think they're definitely more advanced, I would say, than most of the other big French clubs in terms of their medical department. Frank's pretty open-minded. He's done a bit of international sort of coaching overseas, and I think Frank as a coach definitely understands a lot better than some of the other French coaches the whole international aspect of the coaching side of things. So I think I've probably struck lucky going to a club like Clermont, because if I'd gone to somewhere like Toulon, Montpellier before, Montpellier, a couple of clubs like that, I've heard a few horror stories. Brive as well. And you had Scott Spedding on the podcast who told you a few stories of his time at Brive. But yeah, I think I lucked out going to Clermont, because Frank's definitely got a more open-minded approach to his coaching style.
And mate, you started off and you were absolutely flying as soon as you arrived. We talked a little bit about not reaching as many international caps as you would have liked with England, obviously. How then frustrating was it? Everything was going so well for you at Clermont. You were European Player of the Year. Like, you were ridiculous for 4 or 5 seasons straight, and you still didn't get a chance to get back in that England squad. Looking back now, do you feel a bit aggrieved? I mean, your form was ridiculous. You're the best player in Europe, but you cannot break into that England squad. Do you see reason in it, or do you feel that you should have been part of the team?
I don't really feel aggrieved at all. I think before I signed for Clermont, I knew the rules, even though I didn't agree with them as such. I knew the rules, and I knew that.
Should they change them?
Yeah, I mean, I had a conversation with my England career has always been a bit of a funny one. I sort of I got in there when I was very young. Missed a tackle on big Sebastian Chabel in a warm-up game before the World Cup in 2007, and that was the stigma that I had attached to me for pretty much the next 6 years of my career, that I couldn't defend and stuff like that. So never really got an opportunity, and then had a great season for Bath the year before I left to go to Clermont, when Stuart Lancaster was in charge, and it was probably about 2 weeks before I was going to definitely sign for Clermont that Stu rang me and said, "Look, you've played your way back into contention with the England team. We don't want you to go to France, because then you won't be able to play for England." I said, "Okay, Stu, I'm going to give you an ultimatum. If you take me to New Zealand," I said,
I like it.
There's no way in the world, Nick. You said, "Okay, Stu.
All right,
listen,
Stu.
mate, I'm gonna give you an ultimatum now. Shut up, Stu. Shut up, Stu. I'm speaking.
Second ball of wine.
I'm gonna give you an ultimatum."
This is how the conversation went. "Okay, Stu, yeah, okay." But I said, no, seriously, I said to Stu, "Okay, Stu, if you don't want me to go, I tell you what, you take me to New Zealand. You 100% guarantee that you're going to take me to the tour in New Zealand. And I will go to Bruce Craig tomorrow, and I will stay at Bath for another 2 years, and see if I can make my way back into the England fold." And I just pretty much come off my best season at Bath, It was Alex Good at the time who was the fullback. But no, I thought I was probably as good, if not sort of in better form than him at the moment at that sort of time. And he said, I can't give you those assurances. I can't tell you that I'm going to take New Zealand. So in my mind, it was Bruce had gone to him and said, look, you need to give him a call and tell him that he can't go to France. He's played his way back into England contention, and he's got to stay here. And I think Bruce thought if I had that England carrot dangled in front of me, then I wouldn't go. But I sniffed it out.
You called bullshit. I like it.
And if he couldn't have given me that 100% assurance that I would go on that tour, then I said I'm not going to take the risk. I can't give up an opportunity of not going to Clermont for a dangling carrot.
Wow. I'm slightly confused about the timeline of events here. It seems like you had about 19 conversations with Bruce Craig. I'm coming, I'm going.
He's got him on speed dial.
So you did move to Clermont. You ended up in Clermont, and then Benji's there to greet you. Give us your first impressions of Benji.
Yeah, I mean, as you all very well know, Benji's a bit of a one-off character in the fact that he's gone through the generational switch. So he knows everything about the old school way, and also has respect for the more current players. Having played, with the young guys now that are all very professional and stuff like that. But and obviously knew Benji playing at Leicester a couple of times. Were you playing when you kicked us out of the semi-final? When was it? Who was it?
2007. Julien Dupuis.
Yeah,
spinned on himself and scored at the 80th minute.
Exactly. But,
and then we beat you in the semi-final of the Premiership a couple of weeks after. Thank you very much.
You're right.
Yeah.
So I hated Benji before I came to Sheffield. But no, he was very, very welcoming guy. Obviously his wife's Andrea's English as well, and my wife's English. So I mean, the hardest thing about moving to a new country is that you, first of all, don't speak the language. Second of all, you don't know anyone. So it's great to have had those two there who are obviously so settled. Seeing sort of Andrea as well being fluent in French, that gave Florence a lot of confidence that she could obviously then hopefully become as fluent as Andrea was, and yeah, definitely made our transition to Clermont that much easier to have that close grip. It's an old saying, but you always say "happy wife, happy life," and luckily 100%. For the wives at the time, they had Andrea, Rachel, Andrea's sister was there, Storm was there, and Phoebe Strettel. They had a really close knit group of girls that made our lives a hell of a lot easier, because then you don't have to rush back home and make sure the wives are okay and things like that. So yeah, it was it's a game changer having personalities and friends like that. So welcoming on arrival.
And talk to us about the highlights then at Clermont, because obviously from the outside, everyone talks about Clermont being always the bridesmaids. Obviously, they have won top 14 titles, but from your perspective, your time there, what were the main highlights?
Highlight without a doubt was the I always say that when we won in 2017 is definitely my highlight, but I mean almost more of a highlight than that was the semi-final against Saracens at St Etienne. I think that first season I never really understood what Heineken Cup rugby was all about, because at Bath we were sort of Challenge Cup, then we play a season of Heineken Cup, and I think the furthest we got were the quarters when we got knocked out by Wasp, and never really experienced too much of what the competition really is about until that first season at Clermont, when we had a fantastic team. We went, I think we went almost. Did we go unbeaten in that first? Or we lost to? I think we lost to one of the clubs away, but we beat Munster.
Pool stages. No, like idiots. I think we only lost to like Sale. Didn't we lose? Oh, I can't remember. No, but I think we went on.
I think we went unbeaten in
unbeaten.
our school stages. Yeah, beating Munster away for the first time, first French team to beat Munster away was something unbelievable. First time playing at Clermont Park as well. And then Saracens at St Etienne was just out of this world. It was. I remember sitting next to Jonathan Davies on the bus. If you ever hear from him, by the way, tell him I say hi, because he hasn't answered any one of my 1,562 text messages that I sent him since he's left Clermont. But I remember sitting next to him on the bus. When we're trickling through the fans there, going towards the stadium, the yellow and blue flags are going. The drums are banging. People are banging on the windows. And I just said to him, look, I said, Fox, look at this. This is the reason you come and play at a big club like Clermont in France. There's just no comparison whatsoever to anything like it back in the Premiership. It's just it's on a whole nother level. And that's definitely one of the memories that will stick with me forever.
Man, I've got goosebumps. I've got goosebumps just even thinking about it. For you guys, what you need to understand is that Saint Etienne is 100 kilometers away from Clermont. So let's just say 110, I think. So on a good run, it'll take you 50 minutes to get there. We drove 4 days, I think, before. I think you remember, Nick. We went on camp somewhere in a hotel. I can't remember what we did exactly. But then the wives and obviously the supporters all came that day. It took them 6.5 hours to drive that 90 miles. Because the whole region basically traveled on the motorway. All you saw was the license plate 63, because in France you have the number of the département that's on your license plate. And it took them 6.5 hours to get there. We got to the stadium. I mean, the place was rocking. The reason being, Saint-Etienne, the green jerseys of the football team and stuff, they're very humble backgrounds. There used to be factories everywhere there. They used to work on metal in that area. And it really clicked with Clermont, which is obviously the old factories of Michelin and all that on that background and stuff. And they just love their attitude, tough, hardworking, humble people, whatever. So when two cities sort of click, and we get to Geoffroy Guichard, the stadium. Honestly, you tell me if I'm wrong, Nick, but it's one of the best freaking stadiums I've ever been in. It is un chaudron in France, what they call, which is like a marmite. How do you call that? Like a big
Bouldron.
There you go. And they just redid it because that year was 2015, right? And in 2016 was the Euro football competition in France. So they redid Marseille, they redid Nice, they redid Bordeaux and Saint-Etienne. So it's brand new, completely closed up. Absolutely stunning stadium. And we got there, honestly, it's an incredible game, incredibly tense. Brock James chips it up. Wesley Fofana gets the bounce, scores. Just a tight game against Saracens, one of the biggest opponents we ever came across. And we just looked at the stands. I remember at warm-up, at some point, we gathered around because we were trying to call, you call it like a simple play to go through a couple of face plays as the end of warm-up. We had to gather around and be like, this is what we're going to do. Just chuck it short and then chuck it up, whatever. We didn't have a clue what was going on. There was so much noise. We almost wanted to tell the fans, just calm down a little bit because we could not hear ourselves. It was almost going to be problematic. That was that much noise. Played the game, won the game, incredible atmosphere. And I remember, Nick, we did one lap around the field. And then we didn't want to go in the change room. We did a second one. We still didn't want to go in the change room. Everybody was still in their seats. They had not moved. Normally at the 78th minute, there's always the cheeky guy who wants to catch the bus or catch the subway, who will sneak off, follow it off his phone and stuff. They stayed there about 45 minutes after the game. There was not one seat left. There was not one Saracens fan, that's for sure. Or probably there was the one, which was like, I don't know, David Strettel's father-in-law or something, probably. and that's about it. And my father-in-law probably had a Saracens, but he had a nice M jersey, but just in case he had a Saracens flag, just to be safe. And we did 3 laps, and I remember sitting in the change room. In the change room, there was actually no more atmosphere because we were all so wrecked out of our emotion. We were drained, and I remember sitting there. We were like, "What just happened?" Like, that was the feeling between the boys. Did we just witness or part of sort of sporting history, not in terms of the results. Everybody wins semifinals every year, but just of the atmosphere that we just had. And I mean, you'll go through international rugby. We won in Munster. That was incredible. I remember every second of it. We won in Leinster. We won some amazing games. This 2017 title, I mean, it's something that obviously a memory that we will share and cherish for the rest of our lives. But still, those moments after in Saint-Etienne, they're just, fuck, I want to play again. I want to live that again. I don't want any of the rest, but I want that. I want those 5 minutes after. Or maybe it will never be the same. So we're happy. We've got it, locked it in the head. Just incredible moment.
There's some players leaving, Van, so I think Nick can get you a deal over there, Benji. So you'll be back. Those times on the field and in the change room afterwards, obviously amazing times, but a little bit further away from the field. I think Johnny's got some inside info. He wants to ask you about some funny stories off the field. Maybe one in Spain, Johnny?
It's come from Grieg, little Grieg Laidlaw. He wants to ask you about a very shit burger that you once had in Spain. Can you please spill the beans?
Did you have a shit burger in Spain?
A shit burger?
Well, the place was called Good Burger.
Ironic.
But I decided to change it on its head because I went in there and it was probably the worst burger I've ever had in my life. So I was like, you guys taking a piss. This place should be called Shit Burger, not Good Burger. No, that was one of our 3 outings to Benidorm that we went on. It was like a week long camp. We had a great week, didn't we? We didn't do much training, but we sort of found a few local Irish Guinness bars, and that's when we actually found out. Let's go drink Guinness like John O'Gibbs, because by the time he's passed you one,
he's the only guy. You come to the bar with him. He's like, can I have 3 Guinnesses? But it's only the 2 of us. Yeah, 2 for me, 1 for you. And he skulls one, and then he chats with you with the second one. And fuck.
That's what all the Irish boys say. John O'Gibbs, let's go drink Guinness like John O'Gibbs. But yeah, no, I mean those trips were great. There was one of the years where we had a trip to Benidorm. We went to the best one.
Barcelona.
We had
Barcelona.
Barcelona 3
days. Is it fair to say, Nick? Is it fair to say that that's the biggest input of David Stretto in his 3 years at ISM? He was average on the piss. He was average on the pitch. He was very average in a changing room, but his main thing that he brought to the club, which was absolutely huge, was to say, listen, the trick of Saracens, the real trick they've got up their sleeves is those drinking sort of training camps, where we used to play a game on the Saturday and then you go Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, anywhere you want. Spain, we ended up going in Spain, and then you still play on the weekend. And it's true, it actually worked for us also. We never lost a game after drinking piss for 3 days and bonding all together. And it was just extraordinary. So Nick mentioned Benidorm, and then we won in Bordeaux. Then Nick mentioned Barcelona. We went the week after in Brive, the local derby. We put 40 points on them. The boys, the 3 days before, were all jumping up.
It's the fear, mate. You got the fear.
Together. These trips were priceless.
You're welcome.
Absolutely.
Do they still happen, Nick? Last year at Clermont, were you still going to Benidorm or Barcelona? Are they still happening?
No, well, once Stretch left, and they decided to pull the plug on that. The trips stopped after we won the trip. We won the title in 2017.
Oh yeah.
Our well done boys was 4 days in Ibiza, which got very, 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 very interesting at times. Which we followed up with probably the worst season Clermont's ever had in their history. So the president decided to pull the plug on all social visits overseas.
The moral of the story is it's all about timing, isn't it? So we used to go on the piss before, play after, and then he always said, he came into the changing room once, may he rest in peace, Eric de Comière, a legend of a bloke.
Yeah.
And Clermont always had this sort of reputation of being right, too clean, too nice, too professional. And he rocks up the old number 2 of Michelin world. Boom. And he walks in and he's like, boys, you win a title this year. Je vais vous faire une bamboula d'enfer. That means like, I will rock your world. It's and everybody started giggling and you were like, President, everybody shouting at him, whatever. And then he got all excited. You could tell he was getting something. Yeah, I'll take you to Vegas. I'll take you to Vegas. And the boys were like, President. Never went to Vegas, obviously. But and in the end, we won it. The moment after the final, like, President, you owe us a holiday somewhere. I said, oh yeah, don't worry. I'm a man of my word. So we ended up 5 weeks after winning a title that we thoroughly enjoyed, obviously. 5 weeks after, with a lot of new boys that didn't win the title with us. In that particular season, there was a lot of turnover. There was, I think, at least 12 guys who left, 12 guys who arrived. And we ended up going first day, rock up to preseason, 7:00 in the morning. Yeah, let's go to the airport. And we went to Ibiza for 3 or 4 days.
It's the dream.
It was an amazing trip. We had good fun and stuff, but it was a little bit weird because you wanted to celebrate the title, but there was 10 blokes there. Then there's always 10 academy guys that you've never seen in your life that are like 16, make you feel very, very old. And who were there, like, they were loving it. They're like, oh, professional rugby, just go to Ibiza, They were loving it. I can still remember the president coming the first day. He was buying us beers for the first lunch, and then it was 4 days of non-stop. Amazing. But that did not set the tone to such a particularly successful season. And we had the highest amount of injuries in the history of the club. I think at the moment of time, there was about 21 guys in the injury list. And we had a terrible season. So I don't think that's going to happen again.
Mate, Nick, what are your plans now after this contract in Vannes? Are you going to stay out in Brittany? I know you got a house back in Clermont. Are you going to get back to the centre of France? Or are you going to get back to the UK? You fancy coaching? What are your next plans?
We actually sold our house in Clermont, so that's an all
boom.
That's the deal. Yeah, nice to
Plus-value.
Wipe the slate clean of that one. Although we've kept great contact with all of our neighbours and stuff there, so I'm sure we'll go back and visit. Plans after finished at Van is probably to move back to the UK. I said to my wife, following a rugby player around is not that desirable.
Yes, you are. They all say that. Don't let her say that.
Yeah. Well, when she gave up a pretty decent job in the city to come to France. So now I said to her, look, we'll go to Van, but we'll concentrate more on your pathway than mine. So she's setting up her business at the moment, which she needs to be more back in the UK than here. So we'll move back there at some point and set up. Not sure where yet, but we'll set up back in the UK. I think I'm going to be what do they call it here, Benji? An auto entrepreneur. Like self-employed
freelancer.
I'm going to try and get little bits and pieces going. I don't want to sit in an office. I've always thought about doing a bit of coaching. I've got something in the back of my mind for that. I also love property, and so want to get into some sort of property development as well. And then, we'll probably end up, doing a whole lot of packaging and stuff for my wife as well. So, just get bits and bobs.
And just quickly before we let you go, Nick, this is probably something that we're going to talk about between Benji and Johnny and myself later on. One of your former teammates this week, Michael Lipman, involved in some very sad news, obviously, and it's hitting the headlines everywhere, I think, but certainly a lot in England. It's a difficult one to talk about, but I mean, have you suffered many head injuries in your career, and what do you make of the news coming back? Because it seems to be polarizing people at the moment. A lot of people saying sort of, we signed up, but admittedly without the knowledge of lots of things that are going on at the moment. There's obviously lawsuits. The main thing is it's just incredibly sad for guys like Michael Lipman. But what's your take on the whole situation?
yeah, funny enough, I've actually been in contact with Lippy. I sent him a message after I read the article. After the article the other day, just I don't know. It's one of those weird things, isn't it? You look at someone's Instagram account and you think everything's all good, and he's having a whale of a time there in Sydney in real estate, and it looks like he's doing well and stuff. And he told me about what he's going through and the symptoms he's got, and yeah, it's pretty. It's eye opening. If I'm honest, like, I sometimes, I don't get the whole sort of like anger side of it, but I sometimes feel like, I wonder whether I've taken too many knocks to the head. I find myself sort of sitting there staring into oblivion, and then sort of, not really, being in contact with what's going on in the room. But, I think, rugby is, it's a very tricky period in terms of that, having seen everything what's gone on in the NFL. We, Johnny, Benji, myself, went through the stages early on in our careers where there was no HIA stoppages in rugby. I remember when was it, 2008 final against Worcester in the Challenge Cup. I took a knock to the jaw in a tackle and was completely sparked out, and got up absolutely Bambi-legged, trying to run back to my position, was facing the wrong way, like fell over, and you sort of just carry on because you want to be that tough guy. You want to sort of show that you're not weak. And we went through that sort of period, and then now we're going into the period where it's become very forefront in terms of safety, and now I think you're going to see a whole flood of players come out and so that they're experiencing symptoms. I don't know. You don't really. I haven't really thought about it at all until reading this and reading the stories of Popham. It's pretty scary stuff. Reading those stories of him and how he's sort of been around his family, and I don't know. You don't know, obviously, whether anything played a part in Dominique's story with regards to that. But we take a huge amount of knocks to the head, and it's difficult to. It's such a difficult topic to really speak on and touch on, but yeah, I think this is only the start, and I can see that a lot more players are going to come out saying they're experiencing the same things in the coming months, if not years.
I think it's an incredibly tough topic to address because nobody really knows. There's that gray zone that is terribly tough. There's a sort of a mentality in rugby where you have to be tough. Like Nick, without being mean at all, he wasn't born like a number 8 Samoan. You were obviously a skinny kid who was very, very talented and very fast, but you knew that you were playing in the big boys league, and you always had to show that grit, that mentality. Like you said, look, you missed one tackle against Sébastien Chabal. I'm pretty sure you're not the only one who missed a tackle against Sébastien Chabal at all. But you still stuck to it. I know you as a fantastic defender who always threw his body on the line for the team. But probably how much does that play a part in saying, I want to prove to everyone that you never thought about your health, you never thought about your well-being, you never thought about the consequences in the future. And you're saying it's tough to say, yes, but just the fact that what's happening to all those guys is making you think, was I thorough enough? Was I careful enough? That's already good. And you sharing it with us today, that's already a first step of saying, listen, we need to address this shit. It's too complicated. The consequences are too big, too dangerous to mean that rugby, I don't think rugby is a dangerous sport. I think rugby is a contact sport that needs to be addressed differently than it was 20 years ago. And so far it hasn't. And like you said, 15 years ago, the boys were finding it funny if somebody's walking like this, and barely standing up after a knock on the head. I remember giggling at Thierry Dusautoir taking Easy Tolomaca, the massive number 8, Tongan origin who played for the ABs in the face. And because, he stumbled, fell, got up, stumbled, fell. And people would giggle. Of course they would giggle. I would giggle. I think I was 18 or 19 or something. I giggled. Now I don't giggle anymore because I'm thinking, bloody hell, that guy he's brave enough to throw himself under the bus of that human bus that's coming at him. And on top of that, he might cause him damage. So when you think it's complicated, I think what you just said is already a first step into the right direction, and fair play to you.
I think we're only touching the iceberg. Yeah, I think this is going to be a whole, tsunami of problems for, I don't even know who, the RFU, the other players associations. It's definitely something that needs to be addressed. We'll see in what direction it heads. But it's very sad to read some of the stories about the effects that some of the guys are going through. When you give so much to a sport and then it affects your home life so much, you start questioning whether it was all worth it.
It's a really tricky one to talk about, and it's great to get your input as well on it, Nick and Johnny and Benji, and we'll speak about it. I think, like you say, it'll run and run, but most importantly, it is the players that need more input, because you guys are at the coalface and you know what is happening. And I think most importantly, from the players that I've spoken to, it is reduce the amount of contact training that you do, isn't it?
100%. So that's where I was going to say, look, I reckon between us, we could all give probably 5 to 10 names of people we've played with in immediately our circle that have had to retire because of concussion. Easily, I could give, I just top of my head, I've got Adam Whitelock, Shauntane Happy, Armand Coster, 3 guys in my last 2 clubs that have had to knock it on the head. The weird thing is, I think right now is as good as it's ever been. So a lot of people are saying, World Rugby have to do more. Yes, we're looking for continual improvement, but right now, compared to when we first started, you've now got HIAs with independent doctors every single game. You've got absolutely no headshots allowed from our shoulders. People's heads are protected in the tackle area. We've never had that before. So it's as far as it's ever come. But you've just hit the nail on the head, Tim. I think 80 to 90% of our collisions are in training. And that's where, for instance, from experience, I remember training with Shauntane, who you'd have played with at Bath as well. Lovely bloke. But it would get to the stage, he'd get knocked out. He'd go through his HIA. He'd try and come back at training. He was getting knocked out running into tackle pads. So not even tackle situations in a game. It was that fragile that even medium intensity training, if he got clipped by a tackle pad, he was getting knocked out. And that's where, if we looked at NFL, like you said a minute ago, Nick, for 10 years now, they've had a cap on the amount of collisions that you can go through in a season per player. And I think that's where, we'll have all had the situation where you lose on a Saturday, coach wants to give you a bollocking. He's like, right, 15 on 15 full contact Tuesday morning, go. And it's a fucking bloodbath. And it's that you can't account for. There's no independent HIL doctors. There's no cameras picking up things. That's where I think the next step is, how do you cap it in training? How do you look after people in a 15-year career? How do you cap head knocks in a training environment? That's the next interesting bit, because it's not always going to be the huge collision and knockout we've seen of George North, huge public, horrendous to watch. It's the cumulative micro concussions of the repeat of getting hit week in, week out in that kind of situation in training. That's where the next step is going to have to come to protect people and the long-term health. I think that's what we're asking for. Is World Rugby, I think, already has gone way above what they've done over the past 5 years, but the next step is, how do we control coaches? How do we control environments? And how do we look after people's longevity so that we aren't having more examples of Steve Thompson and Alex Popham, because we don't want that in our sport. We've all now got kids. You want to take them down to mini rugby. You want them to have the social vehicle and the fun that we've had and the camaraderie, but you don't want them age 40 to have early dementia from getting head knocks. It's just not what we want. So I think that's the next step with World Rugby, is they have to step in on a global, if it's the professional level, and say, look, this is what we want from you, and this is how it has to change, I would say.
I 100% agree with you. I get, a lot of people come up to me when I, with my son, and they go, "Oh, little rugby Ben," and I say to them, "No, I don't want him to play rugby. I want to put a golf club in his hand before I put a rugby ball in his hand, because
of the money."
Yeah. Screw the team sport. Get independence.
You've always been the smartest, Nick. You've always been the smartest. I told it to everyone. You can play golf until you're 155 and you will milk it dry. Well done, mate.
Exactly. Look at
That's why you're back, and that's why you never made it in the tight five. You're a bit scared, but you're very smart.
Benji hit it on the head. But you just put your bodies through absolute. You put it through an absolute.
You know what the weird thing people don't appreciate is that it's actually, again, against you, Benji, and I'm going to talk against forwards, which I would never normally do. But the highest speed collisions are always wingers and fullbacks. It's those guys that go through the car crash and get the most amount of impact injuries, which is crazy. I didn't really know that until 2-3 years ago, but they're actually braver than we thought. There we go.
I never sprinted because I wanted to protect my head. That's the only reason.
You're smart, mate.
You think? Look, I lasted 16 years, and all those cheeky, fast wingers and stuff, they're all collapsing before. Don't overuse your engine. Basically, that's the whole idea.
I think they should. I think they should start introducing what they have in the NFL: the free catch, the fair catch rule. Because at the moment, you've got you've got someone who's coming at a full pace, 40 meters sprint, and absolutely smashing you when you catch the ball.
Like a Tuilagi, for instance.
Yeah, like a Tuilagi. I've had plenty of those two. There's different rule changes that potentially could be looked at, but it's only the start, I think.
Right, Nick, quick fire. Who's the most talented player you played with in France?
I say Tuilagi.
He's a popular choice, isn't he?
I knew it. And hey, coming from a guy who was in direct competition with him and Scott Spitting, and Scott Spitting pretty much said the same thing.
I had to play
that is.
The guy's, he's a different level. He you think he's sort of cruising at 60%, and his ability to be able to read the game and put people into space is something I've never seen before. Just as he just opens up space for other players so easily, and he's so unselfish. He's always looking to put someone else away before himself, and to go with it as well as his character off the field. What a man!
It's funny because honestly, if you asked Ice, there's a strong chance that Nick would be in the top 3. So that's I'm not joking. So that's how much these two actually enjoy each other off the field as human blokes, and then they recognize talent on the field.
And then what's the craziest thing you've heard a coach say out in France then?
Say or do. Say or do.
Say or do. That's a tricky one. I mean, we had John O'Gibbs, whose second word was either CUNT or F. Pretty much every meeting that we went through. Craziest thing that they said. You got any in mind, Benji?
I've got one, but I would love it if you came across it first. I don't even know if you were there.
Who was it involving?
No, it was Frank.
Was it Frank, was it?
But I don't know if you remember, but we lost to that shit season that you're talking about.
Oh, the one we lost.
Was it that? Yeah, we lost to Toulon at home. I think we lost.
Well,
was it 28-5?
He did.
Yeah, but that's a bit of both.
He brought us in at 6 o'clock in the morning when it was fucking pitch black and got us bloody tackle bags and sausages in the dark. The only person that was interested in being there was Pillow van der Vestaes.
Do you remember how well I did in that training?
I don't remember actually, no.
You don't remember because I wasn't there. Because after the game, listen, I had planned to go back to Paris for a couple. My parents live in Paris, and I had plans to go. Win or lose, mate, I'm gone. I took the car and I'm there and stuff. I get a text, boys, training 6 o'clock in the morning, Sunday morning, whatever. I call Frank 5:49 or whatever, mate. I'm not gonna be there. You literally text me to be like, be in 1 hour at training. I am not in Clermont. I'm 4 hours away. There's no chance. And he answers with the darkest voice, but I mean the darkest voice. You could tell he hadn't been sleeping. Frank is the type of guy who would I think he gets at the club at about 5:15 every day. He's one of those guys that will basically outwork you. You know, that's his mentality. I'll do so much that I'll prove that I can outwork you. And he's like, fine, see you Tuesday or see you Monday. Hung up. I was like, oh, bloody hell. And then I heard about that crazy training on the Sunday or the Monday. I can't remember what it was. But still, the day after was still pretty mongrel. It was still the what was it? It was like wrestling in the middle, ripping balls. John O'Gibbs came up with this. You know, I love it when a coach just comes up with a drill saying, how can I make them fight each other? How can I make them literally hate each other? And then Nick mentioned Pillow van der Merwe, who was actually, he was a medical joker during the World Cup, because I was in the World Cup with France, big me. And I came back from the World Cup, and I start the first game. Then I come back, and we had a few beers after that game, and he's in the toilet with me, and he's looking, he's like, yeah, I'm happy you got to start, mate. I told the coaches, it's good. We need to share the jersey. And I'm looking at him. I've been playing 6 years here. You've got about 9 games under your belt during the World Cup as a medical joker. Wow, you and me are gonna get along. It's gonna be like Nick and red wine, basically. It's gonna be
that training session, right, in the pitch black. I mean, you know, when it's so dark, you can't see someone until they're like, you know, almost in your face to know who they are. So you're holding a tackle bag, and you actually don't know who's going to tackle you until you're freaking 3 meters back on your back. And he was the only one taking a 20-meter run up and charging. And you can hear this freaking noise coming from 20 meters away. You don't know what's about to hit you. And then the next thing you know, boof! You know, fucking pillow and come and smack you from 20 meters away. I mean, thankfully though, that was one of the only times where I was like, oh, okay, these are the sort of stories that you hear about French living, French rugby. We didn't get to experience too many of them in my tenure at Clermont. But yeah, that was pretty funny. The other funny one actually as well, I got to say, was Scott Spedding.
Go on.
We played against the Ospreys in the I think it was the second game of the Heineken Cup or something, and me and him have been sort of swapping shirts, and he scored 2 tries, I think, and played really, really well. Anyway, next week I get chosen at fullback for the
play Saracens, right?
The home game against Saracens, I think it was in Heineken Cup. So I had Scott, and I was like, Scott, that is bullshit, mate. You're like, you had your best game you've had this whole season. You've got to go to Frank and say something. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, you know, me and Scott get on really well. We still keep in touch, and you know, it was the first time I probably had a great relationship with someone who's in my same position. But so me and Stretz were there. We're like, and Scott was like, no, not doing it. No, this is bullshit. I'm not doing it. Okay, I'm not going. And we're like, Scott, you got to go. This is ridiculous. Stretz came and joined the conversation. He was like, mate, you got to do it. Because his hands are all fucked up.
his fingers are gone. And he always complains that they didn't let him get his fingers operated on. He will go on. We need to get him on this podcast. He will talk for hours. And Frank did not allow me to get my fingers done. And look at the state of my fingers. Look.
Anyway, Stretz comes in and he's like, Scott, you've got to go to Frank and you've got to say something, because this can't continue. Like, you've played seriously well. And he was a man of the match, hasn't he? I was happy enough to say, look, you start the next game. He was like, built up his courage. He was like, okay, I'm going to go. He goes up into Frank's room. He's back in no longer than 5 minutes. He's back. Me and Stretz were like, hey, how did it go? He was like, I've just been fired. He said, Frank, he was off contract, and Frank told him there and then, he was like, yeah, we don't want you for next year. He was like, thanks, guys.
Oh, man.
Just joking. Just like, oh.
And when we had Scott Spedding on, he spoke so highly of you, Nick, and you got him the sack.
And Stretch.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. thanks ever so much for joining us, Nick, and sharing all those stories, the good and the bad and everything in between. And massive good luck for the coming season in Pro D2 and whatever you go on to do moving back to England after that.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. Thanks a lot for having me on there. It was great.
Yeah,
Cheers,
you're a
mate.
legend, Nick. Kiss to the family. Take care, my man.
Cheers.
Cheers, buddy.
Cheers, Nick.
See you guys.
I think he is a genuine legend of a bloke. He's kind. He's good-hearted. He's genuine. He's just a fantastic bloke to have in a squad, in a team, in the changing room. That season, he obviously, you tried, Johnny, to big him up and stuff, and he underplayed it massively. But that season, 2014, 2015, he was an absolute fire. Like every game, and I think he played about 36 games that season. Every game that he played, he was outstanding. He was the best guy on the pitch. He was the smallest guy on the pitch, but he was just outstanding. That final against Toulon, we were hanging on by a thread in 2015 in Twickenham, the Champions Cup final, because we just got out-muscled and stuff. And he is the only one that shined, played well, chipped the ball over when everybody was absolutely drenched, picked the ball up and scored and stuff. He's genuinely one of the very fortunate encounters I had in my career. When you meet a bloke whose talent is basically, whose incredible talent is half of the bloke that he is.
Absolutely great to have Nick on. And just before we go, Champions Cup is starting this weekend. So what do you make of the new format, very briefly? And then how do you think the French clubs will fare? Because Toulouse are away at Ulster, but they've got a tough draw because of where they finished when the season was cut short last time around. How do you think the French clubs will get on?
Benji?
I'm not a huge fan of new format, but I'm delighted that they tried to find something different because they needed to. Okay, so at least they tried to come up with a new solution. So fair play to EPCR. They're like, listen, it's already going to be a crazy calendar. They were the only ones who tried to get one less game day, if you know what I mean, one less date, one less feature to fit in a crazy calendar. Whereas, like we said last week or 2 weeks ago, the November test in France were meant to be 3 games, and then they turned them into 6. You know, so at least they played their part, and I thought that was great. The reason that I'm not so happy with it is I think the Challenge Cup, which I'm commentating for French rugby, is completely gone because you basically took the 4 teams already of the second division of European rugby. Doesn't make much sense. Okay. And that subject is not sustainable. But I love what they've done is quarterfinal there and home. I think that's amazing. That is going to be 2 extraordinary games. But what's the difference between that and back-to-back, like like Nick said, when we went to win in Munster, we had to play them back-to-back. It's those back-to-back games in December. Whenever we played Leinster, there was always back-to-back. Munster, back-to-back. Whenever those big games, they fit there. So what's the difference? It's pretty much the same thing, right? Except the number 2 of the pool could potentially still get qualified depending on points and stuff. So I'm excited they tried to do something new. I'm a bit frustrated by the fact that it's penalizing Challenge Cup and that we'll see less oppositions and stuff, but I'm delighted about the quarterfinals. Then, that being said, I absolutely adore European rugby. I think it's just under basically international rugby, and that's where you see guys finally stepping into the big dog shoes, you know, and stepping up into what the big thing is. Those oppositions that we love, those fans mixing, having, you know, Munster fans having beers with the Clermont fans. Those extraordinary moments that we cherish and love, and I think they're absolutely essential to rugby. That's why we love Six Nations so much. We love Six Nations so much. Maybe 30% of what happens on the field, 70% of what happens off the field, of visiting Scotland, of welcoming Ireland, of going to beat the crazy English that we love to hate, you know, and vice versa. That's that. And so club rugby is the same. And so I'm excited to see what it can bring, but I'm just a little bit frustrated about what it's going to do to Challenge Cup.
I pretty much 100% agree. It has always been my favorite competition. So the fact that it's back and you've got cross-border European rugby, I'm absolutely delighted. the format isn't ideal, but the fact that we've got something, I'm delighted. And for you, Benji, the away days, the back-to-backs, the things we're used to, the tradition, I absolutely love the competition. I think it's the best club competition in the world, personally. It's my favourite. It's not the ideal scenario, but just to have it back is great. And like you said, I'm looking forward to Cameron Walkie, Moefana going back to Bordeaux, seeing if they can beat Northampton in Northampton, who are really struggling. And yeah, seeing if these young kids can step up, because we've pretty much had a year of bit part rugby. And this is now, again, high level European platform. Let's see what these kids can do. And I think for the French aspect, without getting too much into the different nations, I'm excited to see what this next batch, generation of GIF kids that we've kind of squeezed through this year, what they can do on that next European stage. So excited that it's back. Not ideal, the format, but I don't care. I'm looking forward to it coming back, looking forward to watching, looking forward to commentating on a couple of games, because they should be crackers. So which ones are you most looking forward to this weekend, Benji?
So tomorrow I'm doing Northampton Bordeaux, which will be good, and I'm excited about it. But honestly, Bristol Clermont, I do say I see it. Yes, Bordeaux
Easy.
are throwing a strong team. Jalibert's on the bench. It's not going to be easy. I lost with Clermont when Northampton could not even qualify to the quarterfinals, had not won a game in 12 weeks or something, and they still beat us by a couple of points. It is still, Franklin's Garden is still a special place to go to. I think there's going to be 2,000 fans. That is just starting to come back, and they need their fans. They haven't won a game without the fans, basically. So that's the importance that they have, and they're just starting to come back. There's some serious players in that team, but there's some serious players in that Bordeaux team also. So I think Bordeaux can do the job, yes. But the one I think Toulouse can do the job in Ulster. I think they will. Because when it's that full Toulouse squad with now Ramos playing at 10, Romain Tanak playing at 12, I think it's a solution that fits them perfectly in the balance. And they've got French, talented, incredible players all the way in the back, only with Chelsea Colby, basically, who will break that equation, who's not bad to have in the lineup.
We'll let him in.
Exactly. But to be fair, one game I'm thoroughly looking forward to, but I think Andrew Brace was meant to ref that one, not the Ulster one, and he got pulled out of that one, I think, is the Bristol Clermont.
100%.
Because Bristol are hot, and I'm a big fan of Pat Lam. I've experienced him with the English Babas, the British Babas, and I think he's a fantastic coach. Thoroughly, he inspired me basically, and I really needed it at the time, and I thought he was brilliant. Clermont, if they want to deliver, they can be extraordinary. And those two attacking sides who love that fast-paced rugby, I hope there's going to be a few fans in, Ashton Gate or whatever it's called, the Bristol Stadium. I hope there's going to, because they can see some fireworks.
La Rochelle going to Edinburgh. I think La Rochelle will be too strong for Edinburgh based on what Edinburgh have produced this season. They've been poor. La Rochelle have been fantastic. So Big Willie Skelton and Ron O'Gara's boys, I think, will do a job there. And but absolutely for me, the game of the weekend is Bristol Clermont. Just the way that Pat Lam has them playing and has done with Connacht. I still can't believe that IRFU let him go. But the job that he's done with Bristol, the success last year, phenomenal, amazing to watch, an amazing bloke, and that's a huge game. It's going to be hard for Clermont.
It's important to notice that it got announced tonight there will be no fans in the stands in France until the 7th of January. So they're coming out of lockdown on the 15th of December, a bit like England, and going back into a not really the tier system, but a sort of semi-lockdown with curfew at night and all that, and decided to cut the possibility of having, even in the good regions, of having fans at all. So there will be no fans, and that will be reassessed on the 7th of January. Whereas if I don't get it wrong, in England, Tier 1 can have 4,000, Tier 2 can have 2,000, and Tier 3 can have 0. So basically, Northampton can have 2,000 and all those teams and stuff. So that will still be a little bit of a difference. It will still, I think, typically La Rochelle, who are mainly dependent on their fans, Northampton, depending on that, not dependent, but it's a big plus, basically. And that will play its part.
Absolutely. We've teed it up nicely, and we will chat about all those Champions Cup games next week. So thank you, Benji. Thank you, Donny. Thanks to all of you for listening as well. Make sure you hit subscribe. Leave us a nice review. We got a few last week, so a few more nice reviews would be good. And we'll be back with another episode next week. Au revoir, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.